During its opening weekend in 2021, Godzilla vs. Kong made $60 million domestically at the box office, providing much-needed escapism during a global pandemic and showing that the Titans will always be a box office draw regardless of the circumstances. However, the world's biggest monster's success is surprising when you take the character inspirations and backstories into account. In this video, we're going to take a look at the unique inspiration behind the two Titans and how they went on to be some of the most well-known characters of all time. August 6, 1945 is a day that changed the world forever. It was the day the US dropped an atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima. A second bomb was dropped on the city of Nagasaki days later, leading to Japan's surrender and the end of World War II. The exact figures are unknown, but it is estimated that between 130,000 and 230,000 people died from those two bombings, and many more suffered from the effects of nuclear warfare, being victims of radiation-related illnesses and long-standing health issues. Reports of the effects were placed under lock and key, and even after the US's occupation ended in 1952, any news surrounding the subject was kept to a minimum. But a deep-seated fear was still very much there, lying within the people of Japan, and it all rose to the surface in 1954. In January of 1954, a crew of 23 boarded the fishing vessel Daigo Fukuryu Maru and ventured out into the Midway Sea. But the ship veered off course, heading south of their original destination to near the Marshall Islands. They ended up 80 miles west of a US nuclear testing site, Castle Bravo. And the same day they arrived there, a nuclear warhead was detonated. The warhead ended up being much more powerful than anticipated and enveloped the crew in a cloud of nuclear ash. The crew returned home, but it was already too late for them, and they all ended up dying of radiation-related illnesses. Mass hysteria quickly tore across the country, with many people fearing the implications of nuclear warheads and radiation poisoning. Nuclear weapons were seen as the ultimate expression of power and devastation, and a deep paranoia spread across Japan. In an expression of their fear, a monster was born, Gojira, aka Godzilla. Creating a monster movie had proven to be financially successful over in the States, as seen with the character we'll be discussing in the latter half of this video. So, the Gojira crew set out on the task to come up with a monster that would bring a nuclear metaphor to life and embody the feeling of fear emanating from the country. Along with the Daigo Fukuryu Maru disaster, the movie The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms was also a major influence. Different forms were initially considered, such as a giant squid monster, a whale, and a beast with a mushroom-shaped head, but they ended up settling on a dinosaur-style creature with a hybrid of dinosaurs used as inspiration, such as a T-Rex, Stegosaurus, and Iguanodon. The aim, though, was to make Gojira bigger than any dinosaur that had lived before in order to heighten the scale of menace and dread the monster caused, with the original Gojira meant to be between 150 and 165 feet tall. To bring the nuclear metaphor to life, Gojira was also given a weapon that no dinosaur had, an atomic heat beam. But the movie's director, Ishiro Honda, not only wanted Gojira to be the embodiment of nuclear weapons, but a victim of them. In the original movie, Gojira is awoken by nuclear testing, and to signify him as a victim, Honda based the furrowed scales on the keloid scars of the survivors from Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Honda had first-hand experience of the horrors of nuclear warfare. As a soldier, he passed through Hiroshima and used images he captured as inspiration. To create the movie itself, Honda brought in special effects expert Eiji Tsuburaya, who was one of the leading pioneers in the art of suitmation, in which a costumed actor walked among carefully crafted miniatures. Tsuburaya had initially wanted to use stop motion for the whole thing, but realized it would have taken 7 years to make. So, they constructed a 220-pound suit made of thin bamboo sticks, wire, metal mesh, latex, and rubber. When the movie was eventually released, it was a huge success and had a massive cultural impact in Japan, with many leaving the movie in tears. It was a movie that spoke for a nation, encapsulating their fears and experiences onto a global stage. For the time, the movie was surprisingly violent and had a real focus on people's horror as their city was decimated. But when it was bought by Hollywood, 16 to 20 minutes of the movie were cut out, the title of Gojira was changed to Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and the overall dramatic impact of the original was somewhat undercut. But just like that, a franchise was born, with Godzilla appearing in 32 films under Toho Productions and in 4 American movies, including Roland Emmerich's 1998 movie and the more recent Monsterverse, started in 2014. The first Godzilla sequel to be released was the 1955 movie Godzilla Raids Again, which introduced another kaiju into the mix, Anguirus. But it was in 1962 when Godzilla went toe-to-toe with another titan for the very first time, King Kong. Kong's birth actually predates Godzilla by over 2 decades, with him making his big screen debut in 1933. The man behind this creation was Marion C. Cooper, an explorer and exhibitionist who liked to put on a show. After being a soldier and even a prisoner of war in World War I, Cooper returned to the US and became a reporter before going on to be an explorer. On his travels, he met Ernest Schoedsack, and the duo would make natural dramas, which were basically documentary footage taken from exotic locations they traveled to, edited into a fictional narrative. On one expedition, Cooper began watching a family of baboons while his friend Douglas Burden went to the Isle of Komodo and witnessed Komodo dragons, which were dubbed the King of Komodo. From there, Cooper got the idea of making a movie of a gorilla fighting a Komodo dragon, changing the ape subject from a baboon to a gorilla as he believed they had more character. Cooper had actually been interested in gorillas from the age of 6 and had seen them as an invincible beast. Also, little was known about gorillas at the time, so Cooper could create the narrative around them to whatever he liked. Burden had actually already captured a Komodo dragon and had it in an exhibition in New York until it died, and Cooper was infatuated with this idea. His initial vision was to have the gorilla and Komodo dragon do battle on an island they cohabited. The gorilla would then defeat the Komodo dragon, and it would be shipped to New York to go on exhibition, and at some point, the gorilla would kidnap a woman. With the idea of a movie that would later turn into King Kong nestled in his brain, Cooper went in search of funding for his grandiose vision, but ran into a major issue: the Great Depression. As Cooper and Schoedsack wanted to literally go to Africa, capture a real-life gorilla, and ship it to the Isle of Komodo and have it do battle with a Komodo dragon before shipping them both back to New York, the budget would have been enormous, and no studio would risk funding such an expensive project given the economic climate. So, the idea was put to one side. But after Cooper began working as David O. Selznick's number 2 at RKO, he found a way around it: stop motion. During his time as O. Selznick's number 2, he would effectively screen movies, and he came across the short movie Creation, which centers around a lost submarine that discovers a secret island where dinosaurs still live. The man behind Creation was special effects expert and stop-motion pioneer Willis O'Brien, who had already worked on a similar project, The Lost World. Cooper fell in love with the idea of stop-motion and saw it as a cost-effective way of bringing his plans to life by taking audiences around the world and seeing monsters without ever leaving the soundstage of RKO. So that's what he did. He brought the sets to life on sound stages and had O'Brien animate the gorilla. As we mentioned before, little was known about gorillas at the time, so Cooper planned on having the gorilla stand at around 12 feet tall. But after seeing O'Brien's work on dinosaurs, he quickly came to the conclusion that he wanted his gorilla to fight massive dinosaurs. Cooper initially planned on having the gorilla stand at around 40 to 50 feet, but the actual project ended up at around 18 to 24 feet. Cooper also really wanted to make the biggest, meanest, most nightmarish gorilla and wanted to show him off by having it climb the, at the time, largest building in the world, the Empire State Building. When it came to naming the gorilla, it is believed that Cooper based Kong off the word Congo, and he also liked the harshness of how it sounded. When the movie was released, it became very popular, and despite Kong's death in the original movie, he started off a franchise, with the Son of Kong being released the same year. As we mentioned earlier, King Kong was a financial success, especially upon re-release, and in 1962, it led to the movie industry's biggest monsters going toe-to-toe for the first time ever. The initial project came off of O'Brien's idea of Kong fighting a Frankenstein monster. O'Brien wrote an outline for the idea and gave it to producer John Beck, but Beck had another idea. So, without O'Brien's knowledge, he gave the project to Toho. The Godzilla franchise had actually been on pause for 7 years, but Toho decided to bring it back to life, replacing Frankenstein's monster with Godzilla and changing the story so the two would do battle. It ended up being one of the most popular movies of all time in Japan, and led to the resurgence of the Godzilla franchise despite the fact that Godzilla seemingly died in the original ending, an ending which is controversial to this day. While Kong has yet to live up to the same numbers as Godzilla, he has gone on to appear in, as of right now, 12 movies himself, and continues to be a global icon. And of course, nearly 60 years after their initial bout, the two went on to fight once again. Over these 60 years, the characters have changed dramatically, and have changed with the times, basically losing the initial pieces that inspired them. Which, in some cases, is a good thing. The fact that they have managed to adapt has been paramount to their success, and there is something timeless about the creatures. And when they were needed most, amidst the pandemic, the duo came back once more to provide us with some much-needed relief, and they have surely cemented themselves as the world's biggest monsters. Godzilla vs. Kong may have brought a resolution to the two titans' feud, but that doesn't mean that the duo are done anytime soon. Both characters are still heavily ingrained in pop culture, and we will probably see them again sooner rather than later.